are talking wines with Ward on Wine a day early, so you are prepared for Valentine's Day tomorrow. And Mike, we are turning things up a notch for this day of love, going with a couple of premium wines from Black Stallion Winery. I'm so excited about this. I've seen the label in just about every place where wines are sold, but I don't know that I know a lot about Black Stallion Estate Winery.
It's one of my favorite wines and wineries. And isn't this a perfect weekend to upscale it just a little bit?
Absolutely. This is the time to spend maybe a little bit more. Black Stallion just released a collection of North Coast Appalachian wines. What region are we talking about when we say North Coast Appalachian wines?
Let me first turn the question back to you and ask you, on a label, how much do you care about the region or the location or where it comes from? Is that like something that you think about when you're buying a wine?
I will say, depending on what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for a Pinot, sometimes I go Oregon. If I am looking for a Syrah, sometimes I go like Walla Walla. But a cab, I am typically going to go California.
And does a dedicated wine region in this country, American viticultural area, does that have any meaning to you?
I mean,
I turned around
history. I know you have. I feel like we need to, our number two.
Here's my notes.
Pencils and pass or fail.
I don't think we do in my industry, in the wine industry. I don't think we do a good enough job educating consumers on what an American viticultural area really is. Napa Valley is an AVA. It is the second designated AVA in the country. Augusta, Missouri is the first. So
that's right. Let's not forget that.
So Sonoma and Napa sit right next to each other. They're separated by the Mayacamas mountain range. And Black Stallion Winery is in Napa Valley itself, along a place called the Silverado Trail. It's a historic winery. The building was an equestrian center in Napa Valley, purchased and made into a winery in the 1980s. And so now we see this new wine from them. They have their Napa Valley wines, of course, which I love. They're a little bit higher price point. You can get them anywhere. They're great wines, but they've just introduced this new wine from the North Coast AVA. Now, what that means is it's a much larger area. It encompasses Napa, Sonoma, and Mendocino and Lake County, which is above Napa and Sonoma. And it really gives wineries like Black Stallion the ability to be a little bit more creative, to go outside of just Napa Valley. And when I say creative, they can make some really good wines, but at a lower price point. So the quality's there, but they don't have to be expensive Napa Valley wines.
So
do they then go to Napa Valley, pull some of the vines and take them north and plant them and see what happens?
That's a great question. And that sort of happens a little bit. What they'll do is they'll take the original vines that were planted in Napa Valley, make cuttings from them, and then plant them somewhere else. Now, once they're planted somewhere else...
Is that what we call grafting or no?
Grafting, right. Grafting vines. Once they're planted somewhere else, you can't call them Napa Valley wines anymore. You have to use a different name. And that's why they created this large, what we call super AVA, to encompass really, arguably, like the best growing area in the U.S. I mean, you can make an argument that Willamette Valley in Oregon is just as good, and I believe it is. But
really?
This is a large growing area, so you can make a little bit more wine, and it doesn't have to have that price tag of a Napa Valley wine, because it is expensive to make wines from the Napa Valley.
And why is it so expensive? Is it just that land is so valued?
That and another thing. Napa Valley is a pretty large area. It's a lot larger than Augusta, if you're comparing it. But there's only 45,000 acres of vineyards in Napa, and they've done a really good job of making sure there's never more than that. There could be less than that. So that limits what the vines have to do, and it makes for less wine, less juice, less fruit, but more expensive price point.
Did any of the wildfires, the smoke, any of that damage any of these regions?
I have a great story about that. So in 2020, Black Stallion Winery, so the fires were all over Napa. And it just so happened that most of the grapes had been picked already and put into the winery to, in fermentation tanks. The owner of Black Stallion, and they own a lot of wines. I mean, this is a large company. And he spent an entire evening, the worst night of it. It was a Sunday night.
The owner himself.
The owner himself. So the fire's coming over the mountain because their winery overlooks a mountain. He's on the roof of the winery with fire extinguishers by himself all night. And as the burning embers are coming, he's putting them out. And he saved the winery. Wow. That's the Black Stallion owner. So we think, oh, these wines, a company owns them. This is the family who owns it, the guy that owns it, and his family owns it. He's there, real fires out on the roof of his winery. So that's one of the things I like about it.
There's passion and love.
Yeah.
What that is.
Otherwise, the winery's gone, and you can rebuild it, but it had so much history. He took, took matters into his own hands.
You mentioned that Black Stallion Winery has only been around since like the 80s. That's fairly young.
Well, if we look at Napa Valley, the Napa Valley goes back to the 1800s in winemaking. Back then they were making wine for missionary and church purposes and miners and people like that, but not miners in age.
Right.
I meant I said that, I was like, wait a minute. So after Prohibition, that had, kind of decimated the wine industry. It took 20, 30, 40 years to come back. So that's where you see Robert Mondavi and other wineries that started to be developed in the 1970s, 80s, and really start to develop Napa Valley. So it's really kind of a young wine-producing region.
So when we talk about Black Stallion Estate Winery, what are they most known for? Cabs, Pinots, Chardonnays? What are we looking at?
Well, you can grow almost any grape in Napa Valley, but if you're not growing Cabernet Sauvignon, you're not making money. So Cabernet is the king of Napa Valley. And so we look at Pinot Noir. That's a wonderful grape. It's grown in Napa, but further south where it's cooler. And then as you go further north in Napa, then you start to grow Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and maybe some Sauvignon Blanc.
Now, when a Pinot is made out there, is there any Cab in it, since Cab is king?
Pinot is a funny grape. It wants to be alone in that bottle, and it does not want any other grape. No, Pinot's sole grape in the bottle. Otherwise, you won't really taste it.
Okay. Somebody said that dedication to a family-owned winery makes it okay in my book to pay a little extra for their excellent wine.
Well, it's what I love about the business that I'm in. You have stories to tell really about families dedicated to making good wine. And that's what this is. So it's a fun wine dinner to do, or fun to talk like this when you really have a good story.
So let's start with Black Stallion, the North Coast Cab. What are the tasting notes? What do you like about it?
So first of all, great place to grow grapes. So you've got some fruit from Napa in here, just a little bit, and you've also have Sonoma County fruit. Sonoma's on the other side of the mountain, a little more affected by the coast, so great place to grow grapes, and then Mendocino as well. So what I would tell people when you see the bottle, North Coast is on the label, that has meaning to it. Pay attention to that. And these are relatively new, so the price point on these is probably around $20, $25 a bottle, which is moderate for Cabernet. It's going to have all those things that you look for in a Cabernet. It's big, it's bold, it's got a lot of fruit to it, a little spice. It's going to grow great with those steaks that you're grilling this weekend. This is your wine, but still make sure it probably could use about an hour of aeration. So, but I always tell you, if you're grilling those steaks at home, are we going to be grilling outside?
Probably not.
Maybe not, but whatever you're doing.
You can put on your winter coat.
Or do a nice cast iron.
That's true.
Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit about the history of Black Stallion. Who opened Black Stallion?
So it's the Indelicato family. Their company name is Delicato. They've also own several other wines that we talk about. One of them is Bodabox. We talk about Bodabox sometimes. Gnarly Head they own, and Coppola Winery. So you can have the Coppola Prosecco first. That's a great wine to have while you're cooking.
What is it? I don't know what Prosecco is.
So, great. Prosecco is a sparkling wine from Italy, and Coppola is a winery from California. So, but Francis Ford Coppola, who was the previous owner and still affiliated with the winery, is Italian. And so he and the Coppola Winery have this wine made for them in Italy because Prosecco has to, by law, come from Italy. So don't be confused. You buy a Coppola wine and you look on the label and it'll say California, but when you buy the Coppola Prosecco, it's going to say have an Italian.
It's from Italy for
It is
sure.
from Italy.
If it is a sparkling wine from California, it is simply a sparkling wine.
Right. It
Okay.
can't be called champagne. It can't be called Prosecco. It is a American sparkling wine. Right.
Okay.
All right, so we have the Black Stallion and the Pinot Noir. That's coming from a different area.
Well, it's still North Coast.
Okay.
So the Pinot Noir, it actually it actually says Santa Lucia Highlands. So they are sourcing this fruit from further south, but it still has a place on the label of note for Pinot Noir.
Okay.
So they're going to the best possible places in California to source the right fruit.
What about red blends? Do they have any blends?
They do. They make great red blends. They use Merlot. I would say they're more traditional red blends because they use Merlot and Cabernet Franc and the grapes that you would find also growing in Bordeaux. And when I say traditional blends, like Zinfandel is a non-traditional type of grape for a blend.
We are talking Black Stallion Estate Winery with Mike Ward today. Yes, it's a day early, but we're trying to prepare you for Valentine's Day. And we've talked about the Cabernet. We've talked about the Pinot. We got to talk about the Chardonnay. Is it buttery? How do you describe the Chardonnay?
A little bit buttery.
Okay.
It is balanced, which is what I like. It's not, like a stick of butter. So you have that nice buttery, creamy component. You've got a little flavor from the oak, which is good, but I want some fruit too. So that's my thing with a Chardonnay. And I'll admit, I don't drink a lot of Chardonnay. I like it. It's very food specific to me.
So if you're going to have a pasta with a white cream sauce, this would be a great one.
Fish, shellfish, pasta, white cream sauce is maybe the perfect pairing. But I gotta have all those things. I don't want just the butter. And that's what this wine will give you.
Black Stallion, I feel like I've seen in just about every grocery store, every liquor store, every wine store. I mean, it's pretty readily available, correct?
Really easy to find.
Yeah.
And with this new appellations on the label, I would want you all to, no matter where you go, Schnucks, Dierbergs, wherever or other stores, retail stores, and you see the Black Stallion label, then take a look at the price and also where it comes from. And that'll kind of differentiate what type of wine that it is.
Okay, we were talking about sparkling. We were talking about champagne, Prosecco. Somebody says, isn't Corbel allowed to use champagne and is the only place outside of the region who can? Is that true?
Yeah, so they are sort of grandfathered into that terminology. Not necessarily what the people in Champagne like.
I bet
But
not.
Corbel's been making sparkling wine since the mid 1800s.
And where do they make it?
In California. It's a
Okay.
California wine. So they are older than some champagne houses. So you have to give it to them.
Yeah.
That's a lot of history. So
Great marketing.
you shouldn't be able to make a sparkling wine today and call it champagne. Like you shouldn't call something a Bordeaux or I'm not a snob about it, but we should have some.
A spade is a spade.
Right. Yeah. You should just make some differences, but I'm okay with them.
All right, Mike Ward, if somebody has a question for you, if it's, approaching, 5 o'clock tomorrow night and they're like, oh, I'm making X, Y, and Z. What do I pair with this to make it the perfect Valentine's Day? They can always get a hold of you by emailing.
Well, they can email me at mike@wardonwine.com. I'll help you find that perfect wine. But if you're drinking wine, you're probably having a great time, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Cheers to you, my friend, and happy Valentine's
Cheers.
Day.